Hello, today we're going to have a look at the F-18 in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and if you've been following my channel for any time you'll have wondered maybe why I've never looked at the F-18 or any of the military jets, to be honest. And that's because I have come from the world of DCS originally, so I've spent hours and hours and hours with a study level F-18 in DCS that works exactly like the real thing, as attested to by real fighter pilots, ex-F-18 pilots who say, yep, it's pretty much on the money and every switch, knob and button and all the avionics and everything works as per the real thing. This one doesn't. That's all I'm going to say about that. But we're going to jump in and we're going to have a look at it. So if you've never seen this, it all looks very pretty. It looks very good. It looks very much like a Super Hornet should, until you start switching things on and then things don't really work like they should at all. But we're going to go and have a fly in it and I'll explain how it works along the way. So if you've not flown the F-18 or you've not started it from cold and dark, I'm going to show you how to do it. And it's very straightforward because it's not realistic. So you turn the batteries on. And again, we're not seeing warnings anywhere, which is extremely unusual. If we go and click on the menu button at the bottom of the screen here, we can pull up the flight control system status, which should show us a load of numbers, and it doesn't. Although they've kind of drawn it, it doesn't reflect anything. I'm not sure if we're going to get stick deflections. Oh, we do get stick deflections. Okay, we'll come back to why this is wrong in a moment. But you'll see an awful lot of this doesn't work. So the bizarrely, there's odd things that do work. Well, they kind of work, like the bleed air. You can rotate it, but the reason for doing it isn't apparent to the aircraft at all. So it's kind of a pointless thing that you can just twist around. None of the forward-looking infrared or anything like that, or the radar, nothing works. None of the weapon systems obviously work. I think that's one of the conditions of Asobo, though. The aircraft, there's no weapon systems allowed in the marketplace aircraft. The oxygen system bizarrely doesn't work, so you can't do that either. The only thing you really can do in this version of this F-18 is go and turn on the APU and then wait for it to spool up. And then once it's spooled up, we'll be able to go and crank the engines, but you don't get any control over the minimum height or anything on the altimeter. You don't get to set a bingo limit on the fuel. None of these systems booted up, by the way. And, they automatically they were just there as soon as we hit the power button. You would have been sat here for 10 minutes in the real thing waiting for the inertial navigation system with a timer ticking down on this. So that wouldn't have been happening. Okay, so now we have the APU ready. We can just crank the engines. And you'll notice the throttles don't work properly. They should have an off position and we should have to move them to idle. So they should be locked at the back. We should have to unlock them, which we haven't had to do. And we can see the engines are coming up magically all on their own. There's so much missing, it's funny. There's this bizarre system here where the buttons or the options available on it are mildly made up, shall we say. The one thing that is nice is the menu button does almost work as you'd expect, but FCS isn't doing what you'd expect at all. The Hud Display is broadly like the real thing. The stores isn't there. The radar isn't there. The situational awareness screen isn't there. It's just nothing's really there. Early warning is not there. It's target data obviously isn't there because there's no targeting. Bizarrely, that's uncaged itself automatically for some reason. So we've got one engine running and the switch has gone back into the middle, so then we can start the left engine. And you'll see that spin up on the screens down here. So we just wait for that to happen. There are odd things that kind of work, like I've got the parking brake on a switch here, but that should twist and it doesn't. What else is really odd? The flap lever. Oh, sorry, not the. I just moved the air brakes. Sorry. So you'll see there's a switch here. In the Hornet, you've got 3 settings for the flaps. You've got either fully automatic, half flaps, or full flaps. So it's not like a normal flap lever. So when you have it off, when the flap lever is, raised, then actually you're putting the aircraft into auto because it's fly-by-wire. So the aircraft pretty much controls itself. It's very easy to fly, except this one isn't really, because it leaps off the runway like it's got springs on its legs or something. The real Hornet's actually quite heavy, and at low speed it's kind of quite difficult to control. So engines are running. Not that you'd know that, but I wonder if any of these screens work. Oh, we do get that one. So we get this bizarre compass display, which is really just a copy of that without the map on it. ADI kind of works. You can hear the APU switching off in the background. Any of this working? No. 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 I don't know why I'm trying to click on them, to be honest, because none of it's going to work, is it? We have got a checklist though, which is bizarre, but seeing as you don't really need to check anything, there's no point having it there. So yeah, not impressed. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be accessible, and you don't want, your average teenager that's going to load this Hornet up to have to spend 2 or 3 hours trying to understand how a Hornet works. Can we rotate the mirrors? No, we can't. We can't open the canopy either, which is a shame. But that's common with a lot of the Asobo planes, to be honest. Other than that, let's just go and fly it, shall we? So, flaps down. If we just go and look outside for a moment, what should happen, and it isn't implemented at all, is you should be able to press the middle of the trim knob here, and it should automatically, if we go and look on here, you should see all of the... Oh, that's interesting. Maybe it is going to do it now. No, it's just showing the flap positions. So if we raise the flaps, you can see it reflects the deflection of the control surfaces. But by pressing the centre of this in the real thing, what it would actually do is tilt the tail planes and pull the rudders in to make it rotate at takeoff speed automatically. But that hasn't been implemented either. Okay, so we put full flaps on anyway, but we're going to switch it back to auto. Okay, come off the parking brake and let's just go out to the runway and see how we get on. Oh, something else to point out. I am twisting the joystick and nothing is happening. I had to map a button to the nose wheel steering switch and it's not obvious, so I'm going to go and show you that. So if we go back into control options and we go and look on the controller where I mapped this, which is my joystick, and we search by input, I had to map the set nose wheel steering to limit to a button, and until you press that button you get no nose wheel steering. But as soon as you press that button you get nose wheel steering, and when you press it again you get nose wheel steering high. What that's really for is carrier decks. So if we go and show you the difference, so I'm just going to creep the throttles forwards. So this is the normal amount of deflection, and then we press it again and that's the high amount of deflection. Yeah, it's for manoeuvring on carrier decks. So I've set it back to normal. And press F and we'll zoom out slightly because it doesn't really show us much. Can we move this back a bit? There we go. That's probably best there. Okay, so we're at Nellis Air Force Base, by the way. So we are just going to go and fly a circuit at Nellis just to play with the F-18. You have to map also a button for the afterburner to enable the afterburner, otherwise you get no afterburner. so it works as a toggle. Actually no, it doesn't even do that. It toggles the afterburner on, then moving the throttles back away from their 100% setting switches the afterburner off, which again is not accurate for the real aircraft at all. It should be a detent on the throttle. It goes into afterburner on the throw of the throttle. But again, something else that's odd. Okay, so let's go and accelerate. So we just go 100% military power. So you can see it accelerates pretty quickly. So 120 knots or so will start to rotate. And it comes off the runway pretty smoothly, as you can see. And you saw that suddenly it leaps into the sky, so there's this crazy physics model that bears no relation to reality. So I put the gear up. Okay, so if we hit the afterburner button, it lights up, but otherwise you wouldn't know. It's not that much noisier than normal. Let's see if it's accelerating out. It accelerates pretty accurately. The Hornet really isn't that powerful. The refresh rate on the HUD is pretty accurate. HUDs aren't the smoothest projection ever. We shouldn't be able to accelerate straight up, and we can't, which is again fairly good. But it is just really odd, because I mean look, at 200 knots that roll rate is ridiculous, and the snappiness of it is just like an arcade game. We really shouldn't be able to do that at 200 knots, and it shouldn't drop a wing like that either. It's a fly-by-wire aircraft. It's very, very odd. Okay, let's pull this underneath again. You can see it's just really bizarre, and it's, yeah, the flight modelling in Flight Simulator really doesn't suit military jets at all. It's very good for GA aeroplanes and airliners, but it's absolute rubbish for military jets. Okay, so we're going to fly a circuit here and fly over the runway at Nellis. This is going to be very strange. So we should be able to fly 210 degrees this direction, and then 30 degrees in the opposite direction. Just watching the speed here to see what it does. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's almost like you've got the same aileron control you would have at 300 knots when we're at nearly stall speed. It's absolutely bizarre. There we go, we're getting stall warnings, that's quite good. But it doesn't get very heavy on the controls. There's 30 degrees, there's our reciprocal. So I'm just accelerating slightly. So in the F-18 you get, as well as the pitch ladder obviously on the HUD, you get this velocity vector. So that reflects the actual direction we are flying. There should be a crosshair there as well, which is a datum point for the axis of the aircraft, and it's not there. Don't know why they haven't done that either. Obviously we've got no HUD modes either because we've got no weapon systems. Nicely though, it is a collimated HUD, which is quite cool. Okay, so if we just have a look and see where we are in relation to the airfield. At Nellis you can use this NASCAR track as a good point to navigate by. So okay, we're going to slow down again. So we should lose speed as we go around the corner, but there's no telling what's going to happen with this physics model. It's losing a little bit of speed. Okay, we'll cut the engines to idle. Flaps to full. Gear to down, gear down, sorry, gear to down, listen to me. Having the bizarre flight model does mean that landing is incredibly easy because you have very good control of the aircraft at low speed. So you can see we suddenly lose lift at about 130, 140 knots. So you need to remember that. So all we need to do is moderate airspeed using the throttles and use the stick to hold the velocity vector on the point you want to hit the runway. It is not rocket science to land it. It's very easy. But it feels completely wrong. It should get quite heavy on the controls at low speeds, and it doesn't. It remains like an arcade game. And we got some bizarre tipping point there. Again, it feels very light. An accurately modelled Hornet would thump down onto the runway. It's heavy, and it wouldn't try and tip over like that, not going in a straight line. This is just absolutely bizarre. Anyway, that was the F-18 in Flight Simulator, and this is why I've never gone anywhere near it. As you can see, I've got the Top Gun add-on. I very much doubt I'm going to bother with the aircraft carrier mission, but if I do, I'll video it and you can have a good laugh, because yeah, none of the knowledge of how to actually land on a carrier is going to apply. Maybe if you've got knowledge of Ace Combat on a games console, that might help you. Yeah, anyway, let's go and park this up and we'll call it a day, because this is just ridiculous. Go and park the plane where we got it from, shall we? In many ways, I just wish they hadn't released the F-18 for Flight Sim at all, because it lets the sim down. Its very existence kind of, I don't know. I mean, even the stock Airbus is more like a real Airbus than this is like any sort of fighter jet. Okay, parking brake back on. Obviously, because there's no systems to really look after, I doubt you can even shut the engine down, because there's no way of pulling the throttles back unless they're going to let us do it here. No. That's absolutely bizarre, isn't it? I guess we could turn the battery off. Is that going to do anything? No, because the generators are running. Can we turn the generators off? Well, that's interesting. So in this aeroplane, the generators turn the jet engines off. Interesting. Anyway, there we go. Probably the worst F-18 on any simulator I've ever seen. It looks the part. It just doesn't operate or fly anything like a real F-18. It's probably more at home, as I said, in Ace Combat on the PlayStation than it is in Flight Simulator. But maybe I'm being a bit of a Flight Simulator snob, I'm not sure. But yeah, if you want a decent F-18, go and get DCS and go and buy the F-18 for it. Okay, I'm going to stop complaining there, and I'll get back to my normal programming soon. Speak to you soon.